Everyone, welcome to the Project Managers Community Group. I'm Shelley Reed. I'm the manager of the Legal Services National Technology Assistance Project, more fondly known as LSNTAP. I'm here with our host or our group leader, Heidi Benke. I'm the host. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know what I am either. It's fine.
And we are here today. We're going to talk about change management. It's going to be a little bit of a different program than what we had planned on. Our speaker was not able to come. So we're hoping that everyone will share their best change management tips. Heidi and I will also be sharing our tips and tricks and things that we can help you with. And we'll start recording, but if we're not getting the interaction, we can always pause the recording. But I would like to have something to memorialize today's meeting. And I'm going to turn it over to Heidi and let her say what she would like to say to get started.
Hi, everyone. I'm glad always to see this group growing little by little. Some familiar names, some new ones, but I am Heidi Benke. I am currently the project manager with Georgia Legal Services Program. And Shelley and I decided one day that project management is a huge thing going on in legal aid. And so this group was formed to give a space to talk about usually beyond tech issues, but we have a lot of techie people who join this group. So in terms of change management, I think everybody here is, um, there we go. I think everybody here has probably dealt with change management in some capacity. Probably if you're like me, you've hit several brick walls trying to deal with change management. Um, but I'd like to talk or at least start with some real stories if people have them or they're willing to share them. And I'll go first just so everyone has a version of that or something comparable. Um, so in 2020, we got a pro bono transformation grant, and that began a large process of actually before the grant began the process, but still it continued our process of completely overhauling our statewide pro bono unit and how we did cases and how we worked with the offices and whatnot. Um, that massive project on its own was a change, but individual components of it were also one. And one that we continue to work with is trying to make sure that our pro bono team is integrated with the staff so that they see us as an extension of what they're doing and not just that thing over there. Um, we have hit several roadblocks with it. People who don't understand what we do, people who want to do things the way that they continue to do them or the way that they were used to doing them. There have been meetings and memos and having to remind people of what they already agreed to and all these fun things there. It's been super frustrating, but at the same time, there's been a lot of benefit out of it. And one of the biggest benefits that we found through this kind of push and pull was concerns about how cases were counted in our case management system. And that was because the local offices were feeling lots of pressure to close more cases, as I think most people here are probably familiar with. But if they partnered with the pro bono team, those cases didn't count for that office anymore. And once we found that, it was just a matter of saying, okay, you can have it for your office. We just need to mark it pro bono, because then we could count it. And I think that that's a really strong example of something different than we thought originally coming out of this process. And I know it's a simple example, but I think that those are the easiest to talk about and wrap your head around. Um, but it's those conversations led to buy-in, which led to our team is actually very close this year to closing the most pro bono cases it has ever closed in the history of the program. And again, only one part of the change, but I'm thinking that those kinds of communications have a big impact. Now I'm going to stop talking and see if anybody wants to share a version of that they've hit, successful or unsuccessful. Any brave people?
So we just completed the transition of a whole bunch of our various telecom carriers onto one. And so there were several points of change management there, both internal to the department and external. The big one was just training, 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 training. We learned a couple of really useful things out of that. The big one is put out all the formal training and then accept that there's going to be a percentage of people who don't attend any of it. And so we wound up doing essentially office hours. We did a set of office hours every day for the group of people whose numbers came over that day. And then we did general office hours later in the day for anybody to show up and ask any question they wanted to and get any kind of help they wanted to about the new platform. And that got us a lot better coverage than we otherwise anticipated in terms of people at least picking up enough to be able to complete the work that they needed to complete so that the new tool was facilitating rather than being a shiny new barrier.
I've actually just I've been researching stuff for a different project, but there was one thing about taking new technologies and instead of doing a single training, making it bite-sized and having it in 30 minutes. And they saw a huge amount of success in that. And office hours is something we've done at GLSP. So I'm glad it works for you guys too. Yeah.
It's also handy as a communication tool with upper management because when people are unhappy, they will often, about anything, they will often blame the computer because the computer doesn't have feelings. And so when there is, well, so this seems to have worked, but I'm hearing the following. Well, here's all the opportunities that people had. Do you mind, telling us from whom this complaint came so that we can follow up with them and, discover why it is that they did not avail themselves of any of this so that we can do better next time. And often that results in, no, let's move on.
All right. I have to do, if y'all are comfortable with it, let's do a hand raising question. How many times have you or have you in the past experienced a thing where you have to remind people that yes, you did send out the email and yes, you did tell them about the thing and they're telling you no, they never received it? Because I'm sure that everybody here has had that, but yes. If you're not, I'm assuming you're lying, but it is normal. I enjoyed that. Let's do another one. How many people here have experienced something where you were told to do a task and then when you tried to do the task, you were told that you needed more approval or you didn't have the authority to actually do the thing you needed to do? I am both amused and like so sad about this. Here's one. I was recently told to complete a manual about something. But then when I did the manual, like a full-blown manual with an appendix and instructions and all that, when I turned it in, they said, oh, they didn't mean a manual, but they told me they wanted a manual. How many of you have been told something, some version of that?
Yeah, absolutely. No real, no communication.
They didn't know what they wanted, so they used the term in their head and then did that. Okay, so we're all seeing similar brick walls. I think let's try a positive one. How many people have through a project discovered something new that made it even better than you thought it would be in the end? Oh, we're okay. There are some people. Good. Let's have a couple of those examples. Somebody who's been interactive with this one, what's something that turned into something better than you thought it would be? Aw, everyone's shy.
I mean, I can give an example of things coming into Ellison Tap, right? Having gone into situations in the past where, when you go into an organization, it's never, or I wouldn't say never. I have always tried to give the processes that are in place a chance, right? I don't go in with the idea that everything has to go immediately, right? We want to see what's working, what's not working. And for me, the change was getting people to understand that building a database, like our TIG database, it's not perfect. It's not maybe the best user friendly, but it's what we had with the budget, and seeing that people are now starting, the advisory panel may not have been on board with this thing, but now they have come to see that it is a useful tool. So sometimes you get that change through doing and showing.
It is absolutely one of the reasons that project managers in general advocate for agile processes and iterative ones, because you learn as you go, and that's without having to know the entire picture right away. And I'll also just say that as a project manager, most of my job is communicating with people, trying to figure out what they actually want versus what we have and the path to get there. And then also knowing how to navigate internal systems, which I have been learning. I've been with GLSP, I don't remember how many years. I think I'm on 12 or 13 years. And the institutional knowledge I have of this thing goes to accounting, this thing goes to IT, this specific person knows the answer to this, ends up being one of my biggest strengths on trying to get a project running. And I'm constantly learning new things about how the certain parts of the organization function. But knowing that and coupling it with being able to communicate it to others and encouraging others to know these systems is a huge part of success. It also means you hit brick walls. Again, there's dents in my head from that. But yeah, these communication pieces, agile, being able to operate iteratively, being able to learn and grow and encourage others to do so, preserving historical documents. I know we've talked about that one in the past. Other tips like that you'd recommend, including things about what to avoid? Oh, we're so quiet.
Well, I actually, once I knew the speaker wasn't going to be here, I actually went through and wrote down like my top 7 things that I have found over the years really helps in change management. So would we like to go through those, and then we can talk and see how people, if people agree with them or don't agree? I mean, we'd love to have that discussion, because every project is different and every audience is different. But I think one that goes probably for all audience, and we've kind of hit on it, is communication. And communicating clearly and often is, to me, it is the key to getting success in any kind of change, and making sure you understand and you hear the complaints people have, you understand their hesitation, and that all comes from speaking to people and getting their feedback. So communication is got to be one of the top things. My second one is involving other people as early as possible. Whether it's the person who told Heidi that they wanted a manual, so making sure you have those conversations and digging in a little bit deeper. I'm sure we all have those experiences like Heidi, where you were told to do one thing and you do it, and then you come up with something else. So getting the people who are wanting whatever needs to happen, making sure they're involved, and then finding other people in your solar system that are involved or can be involved to make the project more successful. So that would be number 2. So communication, involving people early. Number 3 would be acknowledging concerns. I love Sarah has just said that she tries to get the naysayers involved early as possible. Absolutely. And so here that goes with my 3rd point, acknowledging concerns. And, Miguel, you had something to add there before I go on?
Yeah, but I'll let you finish if you like. I can go after you. No worries.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll come back to you then. So acknowledging the concerns that people have in making the change. And sometimes it is the little changes that are the most difficult, at least in my experience. When everybody realizes something is broken, it's sometimes pretty easy to get that change through because everybody is desperate for a solution. Not always, but acknowledging all the concerns that people have in making the change, and addressing those as well. My number 4 was providing support and training. When you've created a change, you can't assume, say you get a new case management system, and that is a huge change. Providing support and training on how to use the new system is key to getting people to understand it. And that can be a long-term process, right? You introduce certain things and then you introduce the next step, and you roll them in over time. But providing that support and training will really help. Another thing that I have found is pacing the change. Don't try to do everything today. People are already overwhelmed with their jobs. They have a lot to do. So if you can roll the change out over time, kind of break it into baby steps if it's possible, so that you can get people to see, but don't just give them one step, give them the big picture so that they know, okay, well, we're on step 1, we're trying to get to step 10, so that they understand that step 1 is just one step in the process. So it's also going back to managing expectations. And then I think one of the biggest things that has been helpful is modeling the change from the top. If you can get buy-in from the top, and somebody, in a supervisory position is the one that's saying, hey, this is the change we're doing, that makes a huge difference in how it works. So up to this point, we have communication, we have involved people early, acknowledge concerns, provide support and training, pace the change, model the change from the top. And I do have a 1-page little sheet that I put together. So sorry, I should have said that at the beginning. And then the last one that I put on is, it's always important to measure the change and the benefit. And then, going back to communication, so measure the change, go back to all of your people, get some feedback, and then if you need to, adapt, because sometimes things are not perfect the first time around. So take the feedback that you get, and then you may have to kind of go through the process again. So those were my top 7 things that I have learned over the years that really does help. And if I remember to, because we're all learning, right? If I remember to implement them, I have a better chance of having a successful project. So Miguel, I would love to hear your thoughts that you wanted to add earlier.
Yeah, thank you. And those examples or bullet points that you mentioned, they really do resonate with me. So I'm a senior program manager at One Justice. I've been with the organization for about 6 years now, and we have undergone also a new strategic plan. Well, in 2022, we got a new one. And one of the things that I noticed during that time as a program manager was that sometimes the basic things that we need in a program were not in place because we weren't doing it before the new strategic plan. And over the years, I saw that it wasn't catching on to folks. And I realized that, we need to kind of like start doing these new practices. So one of those things is like having goals for programs or projects and having it somewhere written down. And then also having some kind of metrics that we want to kind of evaluate, so we can see if we're actually meeting our intended outcomes. Because sometimes, we want to do something, but we don't have those like clear goals written down. And later down the line, when the program ends, you realize you come up with something completely different that wasn't what you're trying to achieve, you were trying to achieve in the first place. So, I took it upon myself and just created like a project plan. And then that project plan, including like, what are the goals, what are the objectives, and some other things in there that can guide us at the end of the project or throughout the project, and also have an evaluation. And I found it really helpful. And now we're kind of like starting to integrate that a little bit more into our programs and projects.
Metrics is the magic word. I love metrics and benchmarks and whatnot, especially once you get people used to them, then they always want them. And that actually makes me think about when you're in the early stages of a project or when you're first introduced to it, taking time to get yourself and the people you're working with around what the process is going to be. It's super important. And some people think it's like, no, I have to hit the ground running and do the thing. But taking that extra time to say, okay, what's the goal? What's the objective? How are we measuring success? What do we need? Why do we need it? I've annoyed people with asking these questions before, but once you know that, the rest of the project moves so much faster. Asking people to give it a chance before they provide feedback, absolutely. Just looking at something on AI recently, and they said that a lot of people try AI once and then they haven't trained it, they haven't learned themselves how to interact with it. And so they are like, oh, it just doesn't work. And then getting them to try it again can take a lot of time. But yeah, Sarah, that's a really good point. Still, I love metrics and like Excel sheets. Those two things right there, you've identified my entire personality.
I think, in the project planning, right, you have all this chance to gather information. Don't let that stuff, hit the trash can once the project is in play, right? Go back and pull from that. And those are the things that you can communicate. If you've heard naysayers during the planning process, now you can go and say, hey, we're going to fix this, So don't forget the things that you have done earlier, because they can help you all along the way.
I had a thought, which is usually dangerous, but I'm trying to think of the concerns that are expressed throughout the project when you're talking to people. The ability for you to recognize and translate. There's so much translation work that happens. I mean, not language within, usually internally, but easy example for everyone here to understand is the language of IT and tech versus the language of the people who are using it day to day, the general staff. And it takes so much time to try and get to where the jargon goes, unless you have an IT staff who is very used to it. I think, Chris, you're one of those people who's an attorney in the IT sphere.
Yes, I was dragooned into being an IT person.
But how much time do you spend translating?
It's how I wound up getting dragooned into the IT space. Is that is a skill set that I have, is being able to translate concepts from one group of people to another. Mostly
Dragooned is
because
also my new favorite word.
like it's a really useful skill. I spent a lot of time sitting around thinking about like metaphors. It took me 6 months to come up with a whole like, let me explain advanced networking concepts as though it were a neighborhood, when I was trying to explain to our staff a change that they were going to be impacted by, but that they wouldn't be involved with when we made some really significant changes to the way our backend network functioned. I don't know if this is common to all of y'all, but we have a lot of people who are very curious. They get very worried if they don't feel like they understand what the change is, even if they're told it largely won't affect them. They still really want to know what we're doing. They want to know how that's going to play out. They want to understand what this big change is that we're working on. And so being able to explain things through metaphor has come in really handy. It turns into an episode of Star Trek where you get like 30 minutes of jargon followed by, and it's like a surfing, oh, we're going to do it like a surfboard.
I'm immediately just thinking of all the words they make up in Star Trek that are just space futuristic, and you're exactly right. Then it's like, oh, it's just this.
And so I just do it backwards for presentations. Like I'll do the surfboard, or in this case for networking, it was a lot of like, this is how a neighborhood is laid out. This is how the addresses work. This is how all that pathing works. So we're going to migrate this or move that. And this is how that maps into a physical space and what that would be like if we were to rebuild a neighborhood. And that taking the esoteric and turning it into a physical representation of something, I think is the easiest way to come up with this stuff. Like a couple of years ago, we transitioned case management systems, and staff do not understand how complicated a database is and how hard it is to move one. And this turned into an analogy of moving an office building. I mean, yeah, it's got all the same stuff in it, but you got to label it all. It's all going on different floors now. And like there is this, oh, this is large and complicated. And so when we're being asked questions about this, it isn't for fun. It's because it will improve the experience of us moving to a new office building.
I do want to plug, Shelly in the chat has posted a link to a webinar that Sarah Cross, who was on this call, also did on change management. So we've got more experts in the room. But yeah, it's a huge topic and it's really important. Let me see. Where else do we want to go? Shelly, did you have more notes?
Well, I was just going to say that we could actually share tips on each of those 7 points, because I know that if I was someone coming to a session on change management, I would want to walk away with, okay, well, that's all those 7 points sound great, but how do I do it? So if those are things that people want to share, or I'm sure that Heidi and I have thoughts on each of them as well. I think the communication one is easy. You want to use as many different methods as possible in many different ways, try to hit people where they are, and make it fun. So definitely that to me is easy. It can be emails, it can be reiterated in meetings, and make sure that your messaging is consistent. Be a champion for yourself. Don't do the undercutting your own thing, like, well, I know this isn't the best solution. Be honest about an issue. I'm not saying to minimize if there is a problem with what you're implementing, but there's ways to communicate positively versus already making an audience turn away. Well, then why are we doing it? So but communication, I think, is probably the easiest one to do. So let's talk about maybe acknowledging concerns, because that's a hard one to do.
I do want to just remind everybody, if you weren't here for the episode of when we had a guest speaker talking about conflict, I believe was the topic, but he mentioned that communication is not just about what's being said, it's about what's being received. So always confirm when you're communicating that it's being understood the way you intend it to be understood. But yeah, just quick plug from prior webinar.
I can talk about acknowledging concerns. I'm under the weather, so I'm in my bathrobe, so I'm not turning my camera on, but I'm still here, so that's great. So a couple of things that I do is I have really been kind of encouraging staff for the last 2 years to, kind of like a kindergarten teacher, is this helpful or hurtful? But like, is this a personal preference or something that would help everybody? Like, have you considered the impact of what you want and your concern on other people? And also, like, if they seem like they're kind of chicken little catastrophizing and taking a tiny concern and blowing it up, I will try to run some data for them or ask them if they've looked into it. Because sometimes, like, what I think happens in our org at least is an email chain or a chat starts going about an issue. And then when you've received 20 emails about it back and forth, in your mind, the thing happened 20 times when it happened once. So sometimes just putting it into a perspective, like it's so rare. I understand why you're concerned, but like it's such a rare thing. We don't need to freak out about it. While also acknowledging I can see why you thought it was a big deal.
All really good points. So at our management meetings, we had one today, so it's fresh on my mind. If something is brought up about being change going on in the organization, I can almost predict who is going to raise their hand with a concern. It's almost funny because, so getting to know the people in your organization and thinking about know who those are, and that this was brought up earlier about find the naysayers. So I know from these management meetings that if I were to implement a change, who to go to first, right? Because they're the ones that are going to tell me all the reasons why this is a bad idea. So find those people that can help you find those concerns so that you can be out in front of them in a way.
I'll go one step further and say if you're having like a committee or a regular group, make sure at least one of them is one of the naysayers, if you can. It's horrible sometimes to have that happen. And if they're the kind of person who's going to be dominant and just try and run over everybody, they're not the appropriate person. But that's how you can incorporate into early work and regularly make sure somebody who's got a different point of view is in the group.
I
And
mean,
one thing,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead, Sarah.
but back to that, it is difficult to work with these naysayer people, especially at first. But as you build a trust rapport with them, they will be the biggest project champions if you can get them on your side. And when they're not complaining about it at a meeting, the rest of the staff is like, oh, well, so-and-so who's a loudmouth who always complains about everything seems to think it's great. So maybe it is going to be great. And I mean, it can add more work on the front end, but I think it pays off in the long run. That's just my 2 cents on it.
I add those people to every testing deployment that we do because it will save me 3 weeks. Because they don't hold back and they want to find problems, and it's great. You just let them into the environment, and 3 days later, I'll have a comprehensive list of everything that they don't like. And somebody else on staff will have that complaint. They just won't necessarily say it. So now I've got a list that we can prioritize and execute on.
I'm trying to write the points as we go into the chat just in case somebody wants to add to it later.
Also, once staff figured out that being very upset about a thing was a great way to get included in a testing pool, we started getting a higher quality of complaint.
So, and that goes with my thought is celebrate the small wins. So how do you counteract all the concerns? You celebrate the small wins. So Christopher's done that by pulling them in and making them part of the team. that's a win, right? Because now they're helping move progress. So, and actually point 3 actually still under the acknowledged concerns of the 7 points, but
Oh, okay. So wait, sorry, that's 0.2.75.
yes. So, and we kind of skipped over the other point, which was involve people early, which would be point 3. You know, I don't know that we need to talk about that, but we can if people have,
I will say one thing on that, Shelley. I think it's important to document the chances that you gave people to be involved early so that when they complain later, you can be like, well, why didn't you participate? And I hate to approach a situation like that, but sometimes you have to, especially when you know people are going to have a strong opinion later, but also did not take advantage of every chance you gave them to give their input.
I will also add to that in a way that doesn't sound as what's the word I want? Like an attorney preparing for litigation, which absolutely I've met people who you need to have it documented. But also with other projects I've had, I've been able to show people, here's the steps that we went through to get this. And that helps the next people understand, look, this has been thoroughly reviewed. We went through all of these steps already. You don't have to do it again. So 10 points on documenting.
yes, and it circles back to communicating. So all of these are cyclical. You'll do them over and over again.
I mean, I think the communication thing is the same thing when somebody's like, I don't know how to use it. And you're like, well, did you go to the office hours? Did you read the email? Have you looked at the manual? Did you attend the training? Like, of course I'm going to help you. But I think when that happens to you one time, you're like, well, maybe I should actually read those emails that come to me.
So on that point, how do you save yourself having to do the same email over and over again? When someone comes in and you know you're gonna do this, have you built in processes so that you don't have to? Like, you make that email response a template so that you can just pull that template and send it on so you don't have to retype it every time. Maybe it's creating step-by-step directions. If you have to take the time to do it once, it might be worth taking a little bit extra time and creating a permanent document that has those steps, or a video, or other things. So there's lots of different ways to solve these problems. And instead of the people coming back with questions becoming a frustration point, because it absolutely does for me, if I have 100 people asking me the same question, especially if I've already answered it, you know, like, here we go. You know, point 1, you know, I joke, there was in our family, my oldest son loves these games that are, you know, the manuals for the games are like 3 inches thick. And none of the rest of the family is interested in doing it. But we want to express that we love our child and we are willing to put some time in with these games. But it was always, we'll play the game and I'll explain the rules to you as we go. And of course, it's always in his favor, right? He gives us the rule after we could have used it. So we actually have on the refrigerator this list, and rule number 1, Liam always wins. Or, you know, rule number 2, Liam makes the rules. You know? So we have this list of things. So just find ways to, instead of becoming frustrated with those questions over and over again, make it something that makes, you know, that makes you laugh. And we laugh about these rules hanging on the fridge. Otherwise, I would have gotten so frustrated because it was the same every time we tried to play one of these games. It was like, we don't find out that, oh, we could have done something different until after we could have done it, and now he's going to win the game because, you know, he didn't tell us until it was too late. So find ways to make it possible to live your life without wanting to swat everybody that comes in the office, right? Great ideas, Sarah. Running FAQ for all the projects.
I will say, if
Super
you're going to
idea.
send a large email out to people, save the email before you send it and reread it, because it can be extremely frustrating after sending the same email 100 times than writing an all staff email when all staff don't know that you've received 100 emails. I don't know, maybe other people are calmer than I am, but I have to take a breath.
For processes we run by email, I will occasionally put at the top of the email, if I know this is going to produce a lot of questions, that I tell them when the next email is going to come out, and I just tell them that that's when I'm going to answer their questions, and I let them ask me 400 different ways. Hey, what is thing that I put in paragraph 2 of the email that I just sent? And that way I mean, sometimes people come up with a novel question, but that way they're not expecting me to answer them right away because they know I'm going to answer it in batch in a week. And then I don't have to answer the same thing over and over again. I can just put in the questions and send around another batch.
I like that. That's a really good one. How do you keep track of them? Do you have it automatically go to a specific box so you can have those questions in one place?
Email threading is really handy for this because
Okay.
almost everyone just replies to the email that I sent instead of making a new one. So I'll just switch Outlook into conversation view and scroll through everybody who sent me some sort of because they're not usually long. Like people do not
Right.
usually ask long in-depth questions. They're asking something pretty short and simple. And so I can just scan through it and pick out, okay, this is 40 emails, but it's 3 questions. They're really all asking the same 3 questions. And then send that back around.
Right.
And that way I'm not driven nuts by people who want a response right now, and they're not driven nuts because they did actually get an answer to their question and they knew when they were going to get an answer to their question.
And I think that that is a perfect example for tip number 4, provide support and training. So, or point number 4. And one of the things I have was offer just-in-time training. And Chris, I think that is Christopher. I don't know if you like Chris or Christopher.
Either, both.
I think that is really awesome because you let them know, hey, there's going to be a weekly update. So we're taking care of communication. But this method is a beautiful example of providing that support and training and providing just in time. So awesome idea. Any other ideas for how to provide support and training? Any tips or tricks that you've picked up over time? Heidi?
I will point out with our learning management system, our current one for staff is linked to it's Paylocity. I don't know how many of you are familiar with it, but staff never remember their user and password. So they won't go in to access it. And then you tell them like, oh, well, all of this stuff is on Paylocity. We found people were just uploading things onto SharePoint because it was easier to access. So if you have support and training available, you need to make sure it's in a place that is accessible the way that people think to access it. And if you're going to have people putting it on SharePoint, then you need to evaluate, is the purpose of it to, because Paylocity has better statistics on specifically who did it. Is the purpose to run the analysis, or is the person to keep single sign-on is worth the investment? We have it. Love is a strong word for how people feel about it, but there are lots of people who like it. But the purpose of the support and training needs to meet the needs of the people getting the support and training and the usability. And
also don't assume that everybody knows what that platform is.
Right.
Microsoft offers the company portal where you can go get downloads and things. And I think they even call it something different now. But when I first got hired, Matt they kept telling me to go to the portal, go to the portal. And I was like, what the hell was, excuse me, what the heck is the company portal? I don't know what this is. And nobody told me, it wasn't covered in training. So don't assume that everybody knows what the platform is. It's easy to think that everybody knows Paylocity or whatever, but sometimes there is that gap in communication or training that someone may just never have seen it before. So whether it's SharePoint, how do I get to SharePoint? So keep it in mind that not everyone is at the same level of an organization as well. So I guess that's keeping your own frustration in check because you haven't considered other people's, that you're not meeting them where they are.
I have to apologize. My assistant manager just showed up.
I have two discussion points about this. Number one, I feel like I'm the victim, or like I'm kind of the victim of my own success in my campaign to prolifically train the staff. And I feel like I've created kind of a learned helplessness where when I want to roll out something I think is really small, they expect me to take a tour of all of our 10 or 15 offices and then hold their hands through like pushing a button. And I've been trying to kind of re-gear people and sort of proposing, like, if you went to the doctor's office and they hand you the tablet to register, like, you do not get a 15-minute orientation on how to fill out a web form. Like, maybe you should treat this new button or this new form like that. And the other problem with training, I feel, is that people, when you're training on how the tech works, it almost always crosses into like business processes and office policies. And I don't want to get caught in this trap where they're like, well, Sarah told us this was the new way we had to do it. Like, I'm not trying to tell you how to change your policy or your office procedure or to get blamed for that or like I don't know what your policy is. I'm just showing you how to push the button and what fields to fill out. So those are things I've been kind of struggling with training. Like, what is the balance where like I train the staff so I know they know how to do it, but not to the point they don't know how to do the most simple thing. And also I don't want to have to tell your staff, like, I don't want to give you a substantive training on what is or is not a conflict when I roll out the new conflict check button. Do I know? Sure. I've been a lawyer for 23 years, but like, it's not, I don't want to say not my job, but not like my place to do that for your staff. How have people been dealing with stuff like that?
Have you tried to train the trainer approach?
I've been thinking about doing that. I mean, we did it when we changed our case management system and it resulted in wildly different competency levels, office to office.
I was thinking of initial train the trainer approach followed by some kind of virtual larger scale. So people already had some basic knowledge before you got that, but then you wouldn't have to go travel to the offices because there would already be someone identified. And you got the more complex stuff, but that means you've already identified a trainer in the local office who can work with you to answer the questions at the larger level. But you're right, there is depending on how many offices you have, especially one question gets 10 answers.
Yeah, I'm rolling out a new project and I was going to try on this project asking for volunteers for staff that are testing and giving feedback to be the trainer and help make the training materials and see how that goes.
Well, so Sarah, I'm not sure 100% sure of your structure. If someone else has asked you to create whatever, right? Maybe that responsibility kind of lands on a different level.
Yep.
That's a tough conversation, but
we've talked about that too. Like, maybe this is more of a top-down change management thing. Like, if a director wants something, it's better for them to train their staff on how to use it. Also, then they have to learn how to use it, which they're often not the end users of the things that I make. So, or the projects that I lead. So they don't have a lot of confidence in it. But I have thought, if I pressure them into being, or if I persuade them to be the trainer, then they also have to develop the competency that comes with knowing how to teach people how to use the thing.
Or have them designate someone to be that person, right? If they don't want to take it on, there may be a paralegal or an admin staff member who would love the chance to build their skills, to build their cachet in the organization. And they have been given this task. So maybe it's a top-down directed person. Maybe the top person may not be the right person to actually do it, but if they direct somebody, not you,
Yeah.
to be that trainer, but I think that's a dangerous thing where you may end up spending more time than it would take just to do it yourself. So
Yeah.
it's not an easy situation.
I'm going to keep trying different versions.
Well,
I mean,
and
it's easier sometimes to do it right the first time your own self.
And I mean, Sarah, you definitely already know this, but those conversations, if they happen at the beginning of a project, are so much easier than
Yeah.
when it hasn't been mentioned. And then at the end of a project, they're like, oh, you're doing this too. What?
And that's we're kind of getting into the next point of model the change from the top. So a little bit of that discussion kind of fits right in there as well. If leadership has decided this project needs to move forward, then getting leadership buy-in, and of course that varies by organization. Let's be realistic, it's not always something that is going to happen. So what are some tips and tricks that you have for when you cannot get leadership to push this change? Anybody have some thoughts that we can benefit from?
Stage a coup. eh, Nicer way of saying that is I know people within the organization who are more influential, and if I can get them excited about it and calling for it, it becomes a problem. And sometimes, again, they might change the project, they may have opinions about that, but getting more support to demonstrate the need and the interest of the project can sometimes help move at least some of the leadership.
So for me, an easy way is when there have been situations where I can't really get leadership to, send an email or whatever, I can get leadership to allow me to have 5 minutes at a meeting that the leadership has called. So I'm in a way getting a leadership pat on the back because they're allowing me time in their meeting. So I want people to think about different ways of getting that leadership support and that push from the top. Be creative. It doesn't have to be that they need to send the email or they need to say or they need to show. It can be that you can finagle in and get that pat of approval in a new way by like having 5 minutes in their meeting, or so think about other ways that you can get that that seal of approval without necessarily having them need to do something other than give you 5 minutes in a meeting, or so all of these tips that we're talking about today, there are creative ways to do them. And so think of new ways that you might be able to accomplish something.
I use positive peer pressure for this, Shelley. Like, I will say thank you so much to Director so-and-so for helping us solve this ongoing staff problem. And after you send out a few emails like that, when you go to the next person about the thing that the staff want, it's easier to get them to be like, oh, okay. Because they do have to help you. I mean, acknowledging that they took the time to do the work or give you the go ahead. I mean, I think people like to get the credit for that. And also they can go to their staff and be like, you've complained about this 100 times and I worked with the project manager to fix your problem, which people enjoy.
Mhm. Another technique that is mentioned, I think, in general project management books is pulling people aside for one-on-ones if you can get them and trying to find out what their specific issue is. Because sometimes it's misunderstanding, sometimes there is a functionality issue that needs to be a big thing. Hopefully it's not just, as so many projects can get, stuck in committee. But speaking with people one-on-one can give you a better sense of it, especially if you have rapport with one or more of the people who are the leaders holding up the process. You can get hopefully an honest answer about where the problems are.
Our next point would be pace the change. So how do you break apart this massive change into phases? Any great thoughts on avoiding change fatigue by not stacking too many changes at once or in a row? What is the pace? Have you found a pace that works for your organization? You know, do you change one thing a month, or is your organization more change friendly and you can maybe get something once a week? How have other people battled pacing?
My biggest trick on that is not to pace the change specifically in the terms of 1 week, 1 month. It's to show the end goal, kind of like a strategic plan. You show where you want to go, and then every time that you take a step, you show, hey, this is one step closer. So they know change is going to come until we get to that end goal. But they feel like you're helping them, you're holding their hand as you work toward that.
I've actually been asking people, would you rather have this big thing completed at once and only have to learn one new thing, even though it's going to be a big change? Or do you want us to give it to you in phases? And surprising to me, often the staff have been like, I would rather get a bigger change in one lump than like these teeny little progressive changes. So I've been kind of asking people as we're going through each project, like, what would be your ideal way to roll this out?
And
Like,
this
it's
wouldn't
easier
be
to
a
keep-
conversation with lawyers if the statement "it depends" didn't come out.
Correct.
Like, it probably depends on the type of change.
And I mean, with some, you can tell sometimes just by the group what their thing is going to be, because there are some groups that are just more dynamically adaptable to change. Like different departments, they have a different culture, and then other departments, they're going to want the baby steps. But I still have been trying to give people the option. I don't want people to assume that their staff can't handle a big change. I'm trying to move away from that mentality.
And I know we're only 1 point away from being done, but I do want to acknowledge that we are nearly at time. So we appreciate, obviously, if people have to drop off, that's fine. But I just want to, in case people weren't aware of time, be respectful of that.
So I saw Rosalind, I think your camera came on. Did you have something that you wanted to say?
Uh, yeah, well, we don't pace our change very well. We just change all the time. Then we change what we're changing. And then when we've completed the change project, we probably change it again. And, all I can say is you can't communicate too much about change. And we've had a lot of our changes are technological in nature, I think. And that becomes really challenging for the percentage of our team that's not young, that has color hair I have, perhaps is a nice way to say that. and so it becomes tough, and the messaging up about the pace of change, I have been unsuccessful in slowing down change. I mean, I've been here 3 years. We have a new phone system since I'm here, and I'm about to issue an RFP for a new phone system. That's 3 years, new phone system. So it's tough. It's like the resources question, right? There's never enough resources, so everybody just does more work. It feels a little bit like the same thing to me for change. You got to change, you got to keep up, you got to lead, you gotta. And then and then you get people that are left behind, and that becomes challenging. So I would say one of the things, if you're the person in charge of the change, is see who's holding up the rear and offer extra help, because I think that change burnout is a real thing.
Well, and how often is it? I know with transformation, we've noted that it's exponential. Once you start changing, once people get into the rhythm of it, it keeps happening faster and faster.
Yep.
And watching for burnout, huge part of making sure that your team is okay and ready for it.
Yeah, and one point to speak to Sarah's point about not having too many changes, and also Rosalind. Sometimes in Rosalind's point about like changing all the time, like if you're going to do a new case management system, when that goes live, that's a great time to make complete change in how things have been done, right? If you have to get a new phone system or new case management system, why keep doing things the old way? There was a
Yeah.
reason that you're getting something new. So you don't necessarily always want to pace change out. So those are definitely valid
True.
points. So we are at time. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. Thank you for sharing so that others can benefit from your wisdom. And we'll see you next month.